from an inside global governance spaces. Like now, the whole paradigm has, I think looking into three kind of gains, right? Like one thing is it has kind of finally normalized risk assessment and documentation part, right? Now it gave importantly it gave regulators a language to act, right? It's not an easy thing, right? And finally, it made companies accept responsibility for not completely, but still, they are aware the responsibility will be on them on whatever downstream impact that happens, right? So those wins matter a lot at this point from where we started and where we are. But like you said, the paradigms blind spot is actually structural, right? Like, so it treats harm as something traceable to a system's decision, right? But on case of now coming back to the case of slop, it's different, right? It's a larger emergent property of a mass productivity tool. So that's the largest shift that we have seen, and it's not that it's about how these models are, how bad are it. It's actually, like I said, it's about how degraded the environment, the signal environment has to be. So responsible AI has solved problems of not completely, but question the problems of unfair algorithms. But it hasn't solved the problems of what we can call something like synthetic legitimacy. So yeah, to round up, we built this governance or responsible AI narration as a considering that AI as a judge, but we didn't build it this governance structure for AI as a authority or a ghostwriter or however you want to put it.
I think what we often miss in policy circles, and we miss that with social media also, which I think Jibu also kind of spoke about. When a new technology comes, we are often so focused on individual harms, right? That, okay, like if, for example, AI discriminates in hiring, then we need to fix that. Or if, and these are important problems, right? If AI creates like child sexual abuse material, we need to fix that. So sometimes policy as a whole, everywhere around the world, is focused on the edge cases and the most egregious harms. But what happens is that because we are so focused on these harms, we lose sight of the societal impact of overall ecosystem that is changing around us, which is, I think, where AI slop is coming. To think about, to say that regulation can take care of AI slop, actually, it will not happen. What you are discussing is actually unharmful AI slop. Like, for example, I put in a bad job application. It is not ethical, but it is also not illegal, right? Like, if I haven't put in effort in my job application or my paper or whatever I have written, an opinion piece, it is we can all argue that, okay, I have not put in enough thought and the cost of creating it is very simple. I mean, it has gone down so much, so it's probably not ethical, but is it illegal? No. And I think that is where regulation has always struggled, and it will continue to struggle. And that is, I think, what responsible AI movement has completely missed, if you ask me. That what is it doing to society as a whole when the signals, as you were saying, there's so much noise and it is very hard to kind of catch the right signal. All of us who do hiring, we are all struggling with it. I also run YLAC, Young Leaders for Active Citizenship. We run 10 fellowships in a year. The number of applications to each fellowship has gone up so much because it's so easy to fill the forms. So we are all really grappling with it because the effort, which was one of the key distinguishable facts of, intention, that has gone down.
Some of these things are not, how do I say, illegal, but the larger question of it's so where do we draw the line? That's a question, right? So me and Aparajita both are applying for a job in Belong, to you, Neeraj. And Aparajita being an expert in policy session, she used AI for maybe improving the language or maybe for fixing the grammar. So right now, even Grammarly is full of generative AI, right? Why I was just, hey, here is the JD for a job in Belong. Make me a cover letter for me. This, but both cases you said they used AI. So that's why now Springer has came out and said you can use AI in fixing your language. That's all right. Because not everyone has English as their first language. Even my first language is Malayalam. So that's one thing. But then there's a second question. I'm going back to the biryani analogy. I'm writing this thesis on biryani, and I'm asking, hey, can you tell me what are the other dishes across Central Asia which are similar to biryani? Right? So does that also count as using AI? Or maybe I'm just how do I say? I could find the same thing by doing a good old Google search. Now, again, using a Google search now itself is a question of AI. Now you have AI coming up and showing you the results. So it's not something that can be defined, or where you draw that line, how much of AI you can use, how much of AI you can't use. I will bring this back to another area that has been creating a lot of noise right now, the job market, right? Like you look at the job that has disappeared, right? Entry level job. Like I don't know if you have read that paper written by Stanford professors on called Canaries and Coal Mine, right? So entry level jobs have disappeared, but where the more and more requirement is happening in expert level jobs, right? Where you have that kind of domain expertise and other things, right? The same thing is happening in the other ways in whether it's content or in the creation aspect as well, right? Whatever that was easy to create, whatever that was on a surface level, yeah, that's being uh, you know doesn't provide the same kind of value. But the expert knowledge, right? Like whether you are submitting a policy proposal or whether whatever you're doing, that expert knowledge is still going to play a key role.
I think what Professor Stuart Russell also says is that what it can what the social harm that may come out of this is intergenerational transfer of knowledge, right? So for example, if you look at how human knowledge progresses, we are all custodians of human knowledge only for a few years. You and I and Jibu, we will have 40 years of productive life. We will learn something, we've learned policy or social impact for some years. But the problem is that if the next generation has not had that kind of training, and they were just overwhelmed with the amount of content that was there, it was very easy, so they were not able to critically apply themselves to that problem, then is there is there like a lost kind of knowledge in between? I think that is a question that we have not answered as humanity, I also believe, because we are seeing with younger people that there is a problem that they don't have enough incentive to develop that critical thinking skill. AI is useful to people who have critical thinking skills, right?
What I personally also feel is we are going through this phase where a lot of people believe we will see a better example will be look at fabrics, right? That rather than social media, right? And I recently I got into me into a lot of Indian fabrics, Balramapuram handlooms or Mangalagiri silk, Modal silk. And I'm proud that I can say out these names as well. They're different kind of fabric, different kind of the Ajrang pattern, all those patterns, right? So there was a time when we were obsessive about all these polyester clothing, right? The Bombay dyeing, Vivaldi, or even the Reliance history, you see that way, right? So, and I grew up in Kerala where there used to be a trend, we had handlooms, but during the 80s and 90s, there was this Gulf boom, and people used to wear all these polyester lungis, which is like very printed ones. And now, which has totally disappeared. We have gone back to the good old handloom, hand woven one. So I also feel a similar trajectory is going to happen with AI or content itself, right?
I think one of the things, for example, in public policy, I'm already seeing as knowledge is becoming cheap, there is definitely more and more, I guess, market signals, like what is getting more valued, it is already shifting to more convening, more in-person conversations, more connections, who is meeting whom, etc., trying to build influence. I'm already seeing in a very small firm that I run that this shift market has already started signaling, because knowledge is cheap now. A lot of our work was just research, it is moving more and more to getting to getting to the right decision makers, having the right conversations, trying to understand spheres of influence, building new spheres of influence, etc. Similarly, this will, as Jibu was saying, that artisanal coffee becomes very highly priced when Starbucks is at every 2 kilometers, right? Humans will find a way to kind of also put the right signals on what is actually valuable in a society where knowledge becomes cheap.
Responsible AI must now govern not only how, like I said earlier, how AI decides, but how AI produces, and how AI, responsible use in high stakes knowledge environment, right? What that looks like, right? Like, what about mandatory disclosures in AI use in court, in legal systems, right? That's where we have seen a lot of hallucinated references happening in academic work, which is happening procurement, right, or other areas. Like, then how can we think about institutional redesign, which I mentioned earlier, right? We've been complacent for years, right? So move, evaluation toward a different process, like in academia now, there is a combination of written and oral submissions, right? Evaluation, right? So those things can be another thing, or now ecosystem audit. It's an unfortunate reality that we speak about AI use cases in India, but the audit ecosystem is that's a whole different question. But like, how can we do that? Like, introduce this impact assessment, right? Like, that can also look into some of the things, and then the question of the public verification of this infrastructures, right? That's where the idea of watermarking, right, can come into places, right? And other things, especially in global south. And then the sectoral governance. So if let's say, how can regulate by context, like in education or a legal system or healthcare or procurement, right? So what I essentially feel is the next decade or next stage in responsible AI must protect not just from people, but from institutions, from the word I use, synthetic credibility as well.
I think the more things change, the more they remain the same as well. I think we have to go back to first principles. There are many things that markets will solve themselves. Individual actors will act in their own incentives. They have their own incentives to deal with many problems that we are talking about right now when it comes to how AI is disrupting, and they will adapt. It will be a, I think, bloodbath sort of a situation, because there's a lot of diffusion. But everybody, like, yeah, entrepreneurs have a huge role to play, I think, in this, because a lot of AI is actually doing enterprise transformation. So I think a lot of individual actors are already kind of grappling with this in small and big ways, and they will do what is in their best interest, and then some kind of equilibrium will be achieved. Then there are market failures that you know people like us will kind of engage with, and it's our job to flag what those market failures are, as you are doing now by having this Slop conference. So the point is that then market failures, of course, is where institutions, government institutions, public institutions need to come and give some direction, and come and either subsidize or ban, or you have the whole spectrum of regulatory tools that you have in your pocket. You have to deploy them, and then you need to do it. I think the main job right now for people like us is to flag these market failures quickly as we see it, so that some action can happen.